Hey there, what's up? It's me, Jeff, the SP Spaz, back with another Fit Friday video. And I'm continuing my story of my body transformation and how I lost over 80 pounds in a little over a year. And I'm now up to a point, and I wasn't sure, I could have made this two different videos, but I before I got to, because I kind of wanted to get to a landmark point, where I hit that mark where I got my original weight goal of 200 pounds. So I'm continuing that story of how I got that. But before I did, the kind of home stretch of that, I had like these two more subjects because there were, I've said before, there were a number of people and a number of things that helped me along the way to figure out what to do in order to continue to lose weight and lose fat specifically, and improve my health and all those kind of things. And two things that I they ended up being very helpful to me in the journey are fasting and coffee. And if um, you haven't done or you haven't read much about like low carb dieting uh, in general or anything related to fasting, you might hear that and think, okay, that's kind of a weird thing to say helped you, especially the coffee part, because a lot of people think of coffee as, well, it's this breakfast drink, or it's like this way to get caffeine in the morning to wake up, because and a lot of people, say they're addicted to their morning coffee and can't, do anything without it. Um, I'm not. And the funny thing about that is that um, most of my life I've hated the taste of coffee. Um, but there's a few things that change that. And before I get into that, I want to briefly talk about the fasting thing, because a lot of people have misconceptions about that. They hear the word and there's a whole lot of different things it conjures up, and is used in a lot of different ways with multiple meanings. Of course, on a basic level, all fasting means is not eating for some period of time. So every human being does that at least a little bit, because there's, okay, you might say that some guy on one of those, TV shows that's like 1,000 pounds or whatever, might come close. But in general, human beings don't eat 24 hours a day. They go some period without eating, even if it's only when they're asleep. Um, and that, by definition, is a period of fasting. Now, obviously, there's nothing particularly noteworthy about somebody, going very short periods without eating, uh, as opposed to somebody like this one Scottish guy who went like 300 something days, nearly 400 days, I think, without eating. And yes, he survived. Um, and in fact, kept off most of the weight he lost, as I understand it. But anyway, but coffee, obviously, I had heard of before low carb diet and had plenty of, although it was usually with that purpose. I talked earlier about the caffeine thing. Now, when I was growing up, I loved the smell of coffee. I'll back up a little bit and say that, both my parents drank coffee, especially my mom had a lot of it. And so I got used to smelling it in the morning, and I enjoyed the smell, but I didn't like the taste. And of course, part of that was that my parents, especially my mother, always drank the coffee black, didn't add anything to it. And so, that taste, especially to a child, is kind of jarring. And bitter tasting. So it's not something that, tastes all that good. The coffee I'm currently drinking here, on the other hand, has a few things in it other than just the coffee. And yes, I always take a swig of water with it, even when it's coffee that I like the taste of. And it's funny because I remember one of Anaerobics videos, he talked about how the people need to make sure that they drink enough water when they drink coffee, because they get dehydrated otherwise. for me, it's always been a natural thing. And I don't know if that came just from me not liking the taste when I had it earlier or what, but to me, it's always natural to drink both at the same time, to have some coffee and then drink some water after it. It's just, so to me, it wasn't something I had to practice or get used to. It just happened naturally. Um, anyway, the coffee I've got now, I've got some coconut cream in it and some cinnamon, salt, and chocolate flavored stevia, sweet leaf drops. So anyway, none of that. Well, okay, I started to say none of that has calories. The coconut cream does have calories, but none of it has anything significant in the way of carbohydrates. So it's low calorie and very low carb. Because coconut cream is pretty much just the fat from the coconut without the other stuff, any of the natural sugars or anything. And it still tastes somewhat sweet despite that. So obviously you don't need much of those sugars for stuff to taste sweet. Anyway, so my experiences with coffee as a child were I liked the smell, didn't like the taste. As I got older, I got to high school and later, there were times in school and other times where we just, my brothers and I just wanted to stay up all night or whatever, where we experimented with drinking a bunch of coffee for the caffeine benefits, just trying to keep ourselves awake. And obviously when I did that, and not liking the coffee, I was like putting a bunch of sugar and, milk or cream or whatever I could get my hands on to basically change the flavor to as little like the actual coffee flavor as possible. I remember one trip I took when I was in junior high. I was in a group called the Junior Historians. So, it's supposed to be for kids that enjoyed things about history or whatever. Like a lot of other things, I was mainly in it for the girls. But anyway, we two times, like once a year, they had some sort of state convention or something that we went to, which was the most fun we ever got to have with Junior Historians, because not only did we get to leave town, and in fact leave school early on the Friday going into that weekend, but also we got to stay in a hotel and stay overnight somewhere. So the reason I brought it up this time is I was going to talk about the coffee thing, is that since everybody stayed up all night, the first night, like the next day when everybody was supposed to be paying attention to some presentation, this was the second year in Austin, they had provided us with certain refreshments in this particular room, one of which was coffee. And you never seen more like 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, however old we were, like just loading up on coffee than you did in that room. And of course, we're all just drowning in sugar and cream, whatever else was available, just all kinds of junk in the coffee, because most of the kids, including me, did not like coffee black. So we're just, dumping all the stuff in it as much as possible and trying to stay awake. And of course, we were still falling asleep during this boring presentation about history, whatever it was. But anyway, that type of, there were times with my brothers where we were at McDonald's, went, in the middle of the night to McDonald's and, trying it. So I had a lot of experience with two things: low quality coffee and drowning it in other stuff to try to drown out the taste. So that was most of my coffee experience until very recently. So it was, and when I started this weight loss journey in 2017, I had no particular reason to think that was going to change. I didn't go into it thinking, I'm going to learn to like coffee or something. That was not a mission of mine in any way, shape, or form. But what ended up happening was the more that I would like read stuff online about low carb dieting and stuff and the success people had with it, more and more people talked about how using coffee, as a tool in this weight loss process has helped them for various reasons. There's different things in coffee. It's not just the caffeine, though that is something that does have certain properties that helps with weight loss. But it's not the only one. There's other things in coffee. And a lot of the other thing is that it's very convenient to put other things in that help towards weight loss stuff. So obviously not sugar. But one thing you may or may not have heard of is something called bulletproof coffee. The name comes from the guy, I think David Asprey, I think his name is the one who came up with that name. But that was just something I hadn't necessarily heard of before, which is basically adding fat to the coffee. Is the theory behind it. And in his particular case, I believe he adds butter and MCT oil, so that's medium chain triglyceride oil. And I think he's got like a trademarked or copyrighted version of it, or whatever that calls bulletproof. Brain octane oil, I believe, is the one, which I have used before. But of course, all that's derived from coconut. Though once it's in that form where it's just a pure oil, it doesn't taste like coconut anymore. So if you're one of those people, like my son, for instance, who doesn't like anything coconut, you could still use that and not worry about the taste if you don't like coconut. I'm just taking another swig of my coffee and have some more of it before it gets too cold. Since I'm already up to 12 minutes here, I think I'm probably going to make this a two-part thing. I should have done from the beginning is, have one video about fasting, one about coffee. But I guess I kind of wanted to talk briefly about how they work together. So I'll do that, and then I'll do a part 2 later on the subject. But part 2 of part 7, I guess it is now. But call it part 7B. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Anyway, fasting, intermittent fasting, basically is what everybody does, which is go some period of time every day without eating. Now, some people have used longer periods of intermittent fasting for weight loss, because basically what they do is go a certain number of hours in the day without eating, and then contain their eating into a certain window of time. And what this does is basically, the body can only consume so many calories or so much food in a short period of time. So by reducing the amount of time of the day that they're actually eating, the effect is they reduce the amount of calories. And there are other benefits to fasting besides just that. Some people will say, "Oh, that's all it is. It's just another way of reducing calories because you can't eat as much in that window." And that part is true, but it's not just that, because there actually have been scientific studies that have shown that there are other benefits in the body to going longer periods without eating. Some people, across multiple days or even weeks. And of course, when you say that, a lot of people get scared, like, "Oh no, you're starving yourself. You're gonna die. You're gonna get an eating disorder. You're gonna." Okay, yes, it is possible for those things to happen, but in general, most people can go for longer periods of time without eating than they usually do. For some people, they may not need to for any particular reason, but they can do it without necessarily having a whole lot of detrimental things occur. So anyway, back to myself when I wrap this up, before I go to the next video, is that I kind of naturally did intermittent fasting for long periods of time myself for a couple of reasons. One, I've talked about before, as an SP type who tends to sink myself into whatever activity I'm into. If the particular thing I was into was taking up, I was really into it and in my zone and taking a lot of time with it and going hours and hours on whatever it is I was into and whatever I was doing, I would just forget to eat. So it wasn't even an intentional thing like, "Oh, I'm doing some sort of strategy or something to try to lose weight." It would just be, I forgot about eating. The other thing is, when I first wake up in the morning, I don't tend to feel like eating. So the longer that I sleep, the longer I go before I get up and really start doing anything, the easier it is for me to not eat. So I was sort of naturally intermittent fasting for a lot of my life. Once I was no longer a kid that woke up to eat breakfast and cereal and stuff every morning, I had periods where I often did this. The problem was, of course, when it came to my weight and health, is that when I would break my fast eventually, what I ate would still be not very good. It would be junk, or it'd just be stuff that was both high in fat and carbs at the same time, which when you constantly consume both of those together, you're it's detrimental to your health. So I was basically losing all the benefits of the fasting with the junk I ate when I stopped fasting. And so the difference in this period of time was I was using the fasting when I started doing that. Like basically the steak and eggs diet is a diet, sort of intermittent fasting is sort of built into that, because the idea behind that is you're only eating twice a day. Well, now, yes, you can do that in several ways as far as when you have your meals, but regardless of when you have your 2 meals, you are, just by virtue of only having 2 meals a day, fasting for longer periods of time than somebody who's having 6, 8, 9 meals a day, including snacks and all that kind of stuff. If you go overnight, you wake up in the morning, you go till lunch without eating, and then you eat your steak and eggs, and then you go another 6, 7 hours, and then you have your dinner of steak and eggs, and then you don't eat again until the next day, then you've got 2 fairly lengthy periods, on either side of that, of fasting, where you're not eating anything. And obviously that's ruined if you do anything like you drink drinks that contain calories or other things like that in between. Then obviously you're not fasting during that period, because basically anything that has calories will, quote unquote, break a fast, because anytime you're consuming calories, your body has to process them. So it's not the same effect. But anyway, so I was doing that even with the steak and eggs diet, incorporating that. And when I started trying the coffee, that was when I was kind of doing a little bit more of a general ketogenic diet, incorporating other things into it. So, and I was doing things like, just going through the McDonald's drive-through and getting their lousy coffee. But because to me it was all the same. I always thought that there's no coffee that I enjoy, so this is just a tool. Get the coffee, put the fat in it, so I'm getting my calories from fat, and it's a convenient way to do that is coffee is something I can put them in. So that was the purpose to it. But if you stay tuned, in my next Fit Friday video, I will talk about how I actually discovered coffee that I like, and some other ways that I found to use both fasting and coffee, both separately and together, I guess you could say. So stay tuned, and I'll talk more about that. And eventually I will get to talking about what I'm doing now with the alternate day fasting, but I'm still a little ways from that. I just wanted to talk about these 2 elements. And apparently, it's more than one video worth, because I don't want to make this video an hour. So anyway, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video, share it. Please comment down below your opinion of coffee, fasting, anything about any of that, any questions for me, or share your own success stories or lack of, whatever you want to say about any of that. Please do comment. I love your feedback, and stay tuned. Join us in the next video. Thanks for watching.